Let me begin this discussion with Mr. Bhargav here. And for those of you who don't know, he has been a long time friend for us, and he has only last week superannuated from his position as the CEO of NTPC Green Energy. Let me try and understand from you in terms of having a context for this discussion, right? When you look at the domestic solar manufacturing space in India, long time ago we used to often witness the industry complaining that there's a huge demand, but then the supply is very low, right, for domestic solar power generation equipment, and that existed for a long time. Now that gap is slightly starting to bridge, thanks to schemes like PLI, etc., etc. But if I were to ask you, how do you look at this space, the way it's evolving, the way it's developing, and what are the 2 or 3 reasons why you think, despite this gap, why you think we would still be able to emerge as a global hub for manufacturing? What is the optimistic scenario here? Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me, Sudheer. Apologies, I have a bad throat, so if you're not able to listen to me properly, my bad. I was a developer, so I see Rahul sitting right next to me as the Adani solar guy who's a manufacturer. So I'm not sure, Sudheer, I actually get your point that the gap between demand and supply is reducing, because the fact is that we are still, as developers, facing a lot of issues in terms of availability of modules. Government has taken a lot of steps, and rightfully so, that was required. Because when we talk about a 500 gigawatt capacity by 2030, out of which solar would be, I think, close to 300 gigawatts, the number of modules we're talking about, or the capacity of module manufacturing in India we're talking about, is huge. And that is where the challenge is. Because it's not just the capacity, it's also the cost or the pricing. In the earlier session, Alok Kumar sir talked about a 5 rupee kind of tariff for RTC power and 2 rupees 50 paisa tariff for solar power. With the kind of pricing that domestic manufacturers are offering today, I don't see that number happening. So the challenge is not only the capacity. I'm sure Rahul can share with you that the capacity is actually going up. But whether the affordability is also there with that availability, that is the biggest challenge. Because if we have to grow, for us, transition, capacity, and cost, all 3 are important. If you're not able to provide power at a cost which is attractive to the buyer, they won't sign the PPAs, and that's the biggest challenge. And if you don't sign the PPAs, if you don't get the PPAs, then nothing happens. So whatever PPAs are happening today are coming out of a very competitive market through the TBCB, which is conducted by SECI, NTPC, NHPC, and SJVN. So the numbers are coming out from there. And that is happening because people are still banking on a reasonable module pricing going forward. Having said that, the government was and remains very keen for promoting Atmanirbhar Bharat, and that includes manufacturing of the solar modules, which is why there were 2 big tranches of PLI scheme which came in. And we are quite hopeful that once we have all these large manufacturers who can then ratchet up their factories and provide modules which are end-to-end integrated in the country, that's when we hope that possibly the pricing and the availability will start matching. I heard someone say April 26 is the date when the entire PLI thing will get available in the country. So I think till then we need to keep our fingers crossed. Otherwise, possibly once the entire PLI scheme becomes operational and all the capacities which have been won under the PLI scheme become operational, there will remain a challenge, but hopefully we'll be there.
Thank you. Thank you for that initial comment. Rahul, you heard him, and he's clearly saying availability and pricing are 2 issues, and they continue to remain issues, right? And he's also talking about how there's a tall order in front of us in terms of being able to create capacity. and there are maybe problems on the PPA side. How do you look at this space? Do you also think that availability and pricing they remain an issue, and to what extent we have been able to as a country address these issues?
Right. So, rightly pointed out by Mohit ji, capacities are definitely increasing. And Sudheer, you reminisced about long time back when we were talking about capacity should increase. Today they have increased. Yes, they have increased. In terms of module manufacturing, the country has registered ALMM, that is the approved list of manufacturers and models. That list has almost 40 gigawatts now of module manufacturing capacity in the country. And I think almost 90% or 85% of that would be of the high efficiency modules that are in use today, currently in use today. So from a module manufacturing standpoint, yes, and India installs about 13, 15 gigawatts a year. Going forward, it should grow to about 25, 30 gigawatts a year if we are to meet our number of 300 gigawatts by 2030. So it will, the volume of required by India would also be increasing, and maybe double or more than that in the next few years. But still, you see 40 gigawatts is more than even the 30, 35 that we expected to go to. But the challenge, and that is where the pricing part comes in, and which is what Mohit ji has been referring to, is that unless this capacity is integrated backwards or vertically backwards, I don't think we have, as manufacturers, control on the pricing so much. And therefore, there will be this imbalance for maybe another couple of years as a lot of backward integration starts happening in the country. And when normal market scenarios rule, then with backward integration in place, I think the Indian manufacturers will be able to offer prices that make sense to developers, that makes sense to the country at large in terms of the PPA pricing, the cost of solar power, the the evaluated cost in all forms and ways of solar power. And that's when we will be able to do that competitively and very confidently. Till then, I think what will matter is how the government, through its policies, and the government is doing its bit in terms of creating policies that balance these two, push and pull, if I may use the word. So there is a pull from the developers saying we need a lot of modules. There is so much to be done for the country in terms of creating that installed base. And there is the manufacturers that are saying, give us the time and the space to set up these capacities so that we can meet your demand, but interim, bear with us. And, the whole country will have to together maybe bear with each other for a couple years more before we truly become and truly claim to become Atmanirbhar Bharat, even in this sector, where it's important for the country from its energy security perspective to have its own capacities, to have its own independence in terms of creating these solar manufacturing capacities.
Rahul, you're talking about backward integration, and all of us do understand what you're talking about. We are basically saying that the more integrated your entire supply chain is, the better it is from a pricing point of view, right? But if I understand correctly, the PLI scheme that we have, it provides that incentive to companies when they're bidding for capacities to so if you have a higher incentive if you have a more integrated capacity creation plan, right? So do you think that's enough? Do you think how much time will it take according to you? What's your thought on that?
So yes, absolutely. The Government of India's PLI scheme has been designed in a fashion to encourage full vertical integration. And a lot of the capacities, like Minister Saab said in the morning when he was giving his video address, that these capacities have been awarded and a lot of them are integrated capacities. So all of this is likely, I may differ in terms of the timeline a little bit. Practically, I think may not be 26, maybe 27, more like that. But that is bound to come. There are commitments made with PLI, without PLI. There are commitments made for a vertical integration, because that's the way you will create independent. It's not only about the pricing or power, it's also about becoming independent in terms of your supply chain. Because COVID showed us how too much dependence on imports would impact you impact us as a country, and that's where the integration and bringing the supply chain into the country is going to be very beneficial for the country, and that's what's going to happen. So with PLI, without PLI, I keep saying without PLI also, because Adani Group has continued to invest in the vertical integration. We've already got modules, cells, now ingots and wafers, and the final frontier, of course, is polysilicon, and we are continuing to invest backwards. Besides that, we've also invested in creating ancillary units, which are the key elements that go into the module making. So the idea is to create not only ability to price it efficiently, but also the ability to be independent in terms of your supply chain, and therefore be independent of the vagaries of nature or diplomatic relations or country specific risks, etc.
Rahul, Mohit also talked about reasonable pricing. What, according to you, is reasonable pricing?
that's that's $1 million question, and for this industry, it's maybe the cent per watt peak question. There is no simple answer to this. The point is very simple. We've got see, you have to appreciate how this industry is structured. You've got a country which has concentration of supply, China, which has concentration of supply across the entire value chain, to the extent of almost maybe from 80% for one particular part of the supply chain and going up to even 95% of another part of the supply chain. And these are all key elements to the module manufacturing process. So with that kind of a concentration, the pricing is not really market determined or demand determined. It's more the supply determined, right? And that's where the challenge is for the Indian manufacturers. What is reasonable for a developer is what he will see as what can I get if I don't buy from an Indian manufacturer. For an Indian manufacturer, reasonableness will come from what can I get out of in the pricing that can help me cover at least the investment costs that I've made, and I have reason to continue to keep investing. At least I should be able to confidently say that there is some return on investment. That could be reasonableness for the supplier or for the manufacturer. On the other side, the reasonableness for the buyer or the developer could be more to do with do I buy from India or do I buy from China? And that's where the reasonableness factor gets impacted, because you're talking of two different situations, and one of the situations has such a huge concentration of the supply chain.
Yeah, thank you. I'll turn to Sandeep at this point, and you're coming from a financial services background. What can you tell us when you look at the Indian solar manufacturing space from the point of view of the financial ecosystem that exists there? What are the financing options available for companies? What are the kind of perceived risks involved? How do you can you throw some light on that? Can you give us a perspective on Indian solar manufacturing space from that point of view?
First of all, thanks for getting us all together. Very interesting times that we are witnessing in the solar manufacturing space. I think for the longest time, we were all made to believe that there is a shortage of manufacturing capabilities when it comes to solar, which was, the focus area for the last government, this government, and even going forward. It seems that, manufacturing is, I dare say that, but it seems that it is more of an afterthought. When India announced its solar policy, and then it kept on upgrading it, till about 3 or 4 years back, I think it became very eminent that we cannot have this over-dependence on China. And slowly and gradually, things have progressed from there. Now, to come back to your question on the financing, till about 3 years back, we were really struggling in terms of getting viable financing options, because on the manufacturing, I think there was a lot of dynamics that the manufacturers had to undergo. Even on the policy front, there were things like, first the safeguard duty, anti-dumping, then safeguard, now BCD. So there is still, and we've already talked about the PLI scheme as well. So from an equity perspective, I think what the investors want today, and this is across sectors, they want consistency in policy making. This is something that I have seen in the last 24 to 36 months that we've been able to get our act together. I think the way India is progressing with various schemes, including PLI, we are getting there. There is still a huge gap, between where we are and where we should be. The investors, by the way, always look at a consistent policy because if someone is investing on the equity side, a typical exit to a private equity investor, will be within 5-6 years, right? At the same time, given that some of this capex also has to be funded by debt, which could be to an extent of 60-70%, there also has to be consistency in terms of cash flow to service this debt. So today, as I speak, I think on the debt side, we have financing options ranging right from a public sector bank to specialized financial institutions like IREDA, which is doing a fantastic job in terms of funding some of the upcoming manufacturing stories. On the equity side, there is very interesting segment of the ultra HNIs and the family offices, which are now stepping up in terms of taking equity positions. Capital markets are just opening up, by the way. We've just witnessed a manufacturing company which has got listed on the SME exchange. There's a very large IPO on the cards, Waaree Energies, which is likely to do their IPO and a big large sum that they are planning to raise from the IPO market. That makes the equity part also very, very interesting. And this is happening for the first time, by the way. For the longest time, we were languishing here because of lack of consistent policies and also the lack of financing, which was not there, on the debt side. I think between the debt and equity, we see at least alternate sources of financing modes which are there. Equity, as I said, ultra HNIs, family offices, private equity funds, climate-focused funds. So this is the range of investors that you have on the equity side. Debt, again, as I mentioned, public sector banks and financial institutions. The good part, by the way, is that while on generation, the regime is still very regulated, right? So on the generation side, we are still at a 13 to 15% equity IRR. You have a 15 to 20 year kind of a time horizon. On the manufacturing side, as of now, as we speak, we have much higher returns, which can compensate for your equity investment. And, those equity returns could go as high as 20 to 25%, given where we stand. Of course, we've got some of the bigger names who have entered into the manufacturing space, JSW, Adani, Tata, Reliance, all of them are there. And then not so large players like Waaree, Jupiter, Premier, etc., who are there. So only time will tell how things will, pan out in terms of demand supply. But today, I am very, very optimistic that the next 4 to 5 years is a fantastic time for making good, handsome equity returns and for decent debt returns in this space.
Okay, thank you. So when you say that consistency in policy has been achieved, what exactly are you referring to? What are the two things you're referring to?
Certainly, BCD has done, has gone a long way in terms of providing that bit of, consistent approach. As you must be aware, 2017-18, India lost the case in WTO because we didn't have a DCR, a WTO compliant DCR policy. So we've done the correction there. There's a much more robust approach towards the DCR, market. I think these are things which are really doing a lot of good in terms of giving that long-term visibility for a stakeholder to take a position.
Okay. Manish, you represent Jinko, right? And I mean, in India, we have this, we keep on saying that, we have a huge dependence on Chinese companies. 80% of our equipment comes from China. We are not okay with it, etc., etc. And you represent a Chinese company. How do you, that's a very unique position to be in. So how do you look at, as Jinko, how do you look at this entire space? I'm sure there is a lot of growth opportunity that you see here. But how do you plan to strategize to grow in a market with that kind of narrative. So what's the larger outlook that you have on the Indian solar manufacturing space?
Actually, India is quite exciting market and as well as very challenging market to serve at present, and it has been so in past as well. Jinko's approach has been always to support any market which has demand for its technology. We see that IPPs are showing hunger for adopting new technologies, high efficiency products. Whatever we launch, we get a right market and demand here. So it has been very exciting. We have been, looking at this market in terms of our growth prospects as well. Like 5 years back, we were not only doing 300 to 400 megawatt annual supply here. Last year, we did around 6 gigawatt. We were the largest supplier to India. Perhaps very soon you will see a report where it will show our number one position. So it has all been done because of the confidence of Indian developers. Also, the policy has been balanced so far, we would say, that has allowed us to launch our products in the country. But behind this, there is a story that, Jinko has been building innovative technologies. We have been investing in R&Ds, in our skill development. We have been creating such kind of supply chain infrastructure which has never been heard of. For instance, now we will be doing almost 100 gigawatt of annual manufacturing this year. Out of this, we are setting up a single location 50 gigawatt factory, which is fully integrated. So we will bring in polysilicon in that factory and take out modules from that. So it will take out all the logistics issues, time gaps, transportation, or mismatch of supply chain. So this is, we are calling as a super gigafactory, which will be fully robotic and under one roof. And this will come into operation by July this year. So 50% of our entire capacity of 100 gigawatt will come from that factory. We will be shutting down some of the old factories which are having cell manufacturing or module manufacturing of P-type technologies as we move towards N-type technology now. As of now, 80% of our supplies is N-type. We have also created a net carbon zero module. We call it as Neo Green. So this is a module which, while manufacturing, including every small component which it goes into the production or even the logistics or transportation or even gas, everything is carbon free. So of course, this will be a need of the hour in future, that people say that solar module manufacturing itself causes a lot of carbon footprint, and how solar can, convert a fully green, power source. So we are looking at that. So the story why I'm telling is something to learn, and we have, made a lot of innovation in this process, and this will also start showing up in our balance sheets also in future. So that's why. So these kind of innovations are quite helpful for any new developer to adopt these technologies. Even banks are happy to support these kind of technologies roll out for their projects. And we feel that in all the industries, wherever we are supporting globally, India is very important market for us, and we feel that Indian manufacturing, Indian skill development should also look at those kind of possibilities, because we are fully confident that India will become very soon a net zero as well as net exporter of solar components or solar energy to the globe.
Okay. Manish, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, about the increasing competition within India, right? So gone are the days when we used to have, small players, small capacities in India, right? Now we have big players and a lot of capacities are getting added up. Very serious, large players have got into it at a time when you're already there, right? Among the largest suppliers. How do you see that competition building up? To what extent do you think that there's a need for you to maybe strategize ways to deal with it? How do you look at it? How do you plan to tackle it?
Yeah, thanks. So this is also interesting aspect. As we are not getting a lot of room for investment directly into the country, we are looking at some area where we can collaborate with some of the Indian domestic manufacturers, and we have tried our hands at that. And you have rightly asked this question about the competition. we have seen Indian manufacturers have really come up in a big way in terms of accepting new technologies, bringing all the high-class machineries. Of course, again coming from China because that is the only source as of now. We hope that something will develop in India soon. But as of now, a lot of Indian manufacturers have taken up very high efficiency machines. We have looked at collaborating with some of them, not top 4 or 5, but maybe the next tier. And we have found out that they have phenomenal capacities to accept new innovations. Their teams are hungry for learning new trainings. What we do in our factories, we almost use a similar machinery which Indian manufacturers are using. We find that maybe our operational efficiency is more than 95%, but in India, maybe sometimes it is lagging because of lack of training or some other reasons, or maybe they're not running all full shifts. So we are giving them those kind of training. We are taking it a step ahead. Rather than looking at them as a competition, we are looking them as a collaborator where we can also roll out our technologies through their factories, impart them skill training, give them those kind of technology transfers, technology transitions, and build our brand maybe in a co-branding mechanism. So the competition, if you look at it, is a competition. But if you try to collaborate, uh, it is a very, very good platform for us to grow and look at kind of a new market within India because there is a Kusum scheme. There are other, new PM scheme coming up for 1 million households, 1 crore households. So we are looking at that market as well for Make in India. And we see that there is a lot of room for collaborations. And we are, I think, presently the only company who is doing this step.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Manish. Mohit, I wanted to ask you about, so broadly speaking, when you look at any developing industry, like manufacturing, for example, in this case, many years back in the conventional space, when the same thing was happening, we used to see a lot of private sector, partnerships coming up, companies joining hands. So a lot of big JVs used to be signed at the time, and that kind of helped in setting up large capacities of equipment manufacturing in the conventional space. In renewables, do you think the same kind of thing is required? If yes, do you see that happening? What could be the, apart from that also, what could be the other ways in which we can tackle, the entire concern about quickly adding capacities?
No, when you're talking about the conventional space, even then there were very few JVs, if I remember. A lot of this capacity came in through the private sector only. Because I think, as he also said, the efficiencies which private sector can bring in, particularly on the manufacturing side, is definitely always better. I'm not saying the government companies are not good, but I mean, this can happen. And the growth is actually dependent on the demand. And government has been very clear, the demand is huge. If you're looking at the demand growth of the solar industry, if you're looking at the growth of the renewable industry, so there's a lot of demand in the country itself. And of course, if the companies are efficient, like many of the Indian companies are already exporting to, for example, Europe and European markets and the US markets. So there's always a huge scope for them to expand. The challenge here again is the pricing part. And I think what Manish said very, I think, eloquently was the scale we are talking about. For example, they said they are going to set up a 50 gigawatt integrated factory. So that is the kind of thing which will actually bring down or get us the economy of scale and probably lead us to a situation where we are better, which is what I referred to earlier also. When people like them can actually have the entire integrated facility operational, that is when they can truly compete with China or any other cheap exporter. Because today what is happening? I mean, all said and done, LMM or no LMM, the Indian manufacturers are not able to compete with the Chinese pricing for the simple reason that they are still dependent on China for either cell or a wafer or ingot. So unless until we remove that crutch of sourcing something from there, which is why we keep saying that truly we are not Atmanirbhar Bharat. I mean, even if we might have some 20, 30 gigawatt of nameplate capacity on the module side, where is that independence? We still import cells. And then what is the value add of an Indian manufacturer on that? Very small, because there is cell, then there is other BOM which is purchased. So actual value add of a manufacturer in India who converts from cell to module is minuscule. And this entire pricing is dependent on what the cell pricing is from China. So this alone will not help us. We need to have control from A to Z. That is when we'll be able to get good pricing. But to answer your question, demand is huge, so I don't see any reason why people will not be coming in. The challenge will remain the pricing. And I mean, just on a lighter note, you asked him what is the reasonable pricing. So he was quite shy in actually putting out a number.
No, I didn't ask you intentionally.
So in today's context, the number is very simple. So if you want me, I can say that number. He may not be happy with that.
Please go ahead.
So if I look in today's context, if I am able to get a module at say 15 to 16 cents per watt peak, I'll be very happy. And I think the whole country will be happy. But I'm not sure whether he's happy.
Yeah, thank you. So you're basically saying we need...
Just a moment.
Yeah, please
because,
go ahead. Please go ahead.
So just to Mohit ji, you're absolutely right. The manufacturer, Indian manufacturer may not be happy because like you rightly pointed out, most manufacturers today, and I say most manufacturers, we are not part of that list, but most manufacturers other than us are still importing cells. And the differential between a cell and a module, how it is priced out of China, if somebody were to do an analysis, will become very clear that the pricing strategy is to discourage capacity creation in India, right? So unless we spend 2 more years and we'll keep debating on what is reasonableness for another 2 years, by which time our integrated capacity will get created, that's when really we will be able to establish a price that is reasonable for both parties and therefore for the nation too.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Rahul. So basically the larger message is we need scale, we need vertical integration and quickly, right? Now, Rahul, I want to understand from you, your company is among the largest conglomerates in this country. What exactly is the long-term growth plan that you have? And how are you progressing on that?
Yeah, so like I said, we've taken this up very seriously. We believe solar manufacturing is there is great potential for the country, for us as a group, and we believe it will be a good service to the nation if we are able to do what we've set out as a vision. So our vision is very simple. We'll do a 10 gigawatt. So it's still 1/5 of what our friend here, Jinko, is doing in a single location, fully integrated. We want to do a single location, 10 gigawatt polysilicon to module manufacturing with all the ancillary units integrated in one location in Mundra in Gujarat. And we have embarked on that journey. We've already got 4 gigawatts of module manufacturing, 4 gigawatts of cell manufacturing. We've just inaugurated our winged and wafer manufacturing, and we will soon be inaugurating our rollout of the polysilicon factory that we want to do. Our chairman has in media committed that we would be putting in an investment of over 70,000 crore rupees over the next few years, which will be both, of course, for manufacturing and for generation, which is also a very large vision for us. So as the conglomerate, like you rightly said, we're fully committed to this sector. We've already embarked on this vision. We have the intent. The vision is there. The intent is there, and the progress is already in place. We've got not only cells, but even a lot of ancillary units like glass manufacturing, backsheet, frames, etc., all in the same single location called Mundra. So we've started off this journey. What is also important, I'm just taking one more minute, going from what I heard from my colleague, my dignitary here, is that technology is a significant piece in this business. It may not be a very technical product, but technology in terms of efficiency of module is a very, very big play in the whole process. So as a manufacturer, the investment is significant, But then if the technology is going to change in 3 years for the better, for the good of the country, for the good of the consumer, but if it changes in 3 years for the next best technology, then you just imagine how much pressure it puts on investment. So while we are currently feeling that equity returns are significant, and we have got a good 3-4 year run in front of us where we can make good returns on equity, we will have stable cash flows for a debt financing, etc. But the way technology is changing, and so just for an example, monoperk, which came really into the limelight maybe 2.5-3 years back, is already at a sunset phase. It's not dead, it's not dying, but it's not the most preferred technology anymore. Like Jinko also says that we are already shutting down some of our P-type capacities and moving completely to N-type, right? And this is just 3 years of an investment in a technology, and not all technologies are upgradable. So, you just imagine, as an investor, as a manufacturer, if you have to recover such a large investment in just 3 years, what kind of pressure it puts on your balance sheet, on your P&L account. So we have to keep this also in mind. It's not, especially when we get to reasonableness, sir, in terms of expectation. So these are challenges that the manufacturing industry faces, and it's a happy challenge because the world gets a better technology product or higher efficiency product. But yes, it also brings with it the challenges of how do we address an investment already sunk into a particular technology. How do you get at least the returns that cover the investment made?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Rahul. The point about technology, absolutely valid. I remember my recent conversation with one of the executives in one of the top 3 Chinese companies that we have in India in solar space. And he was saying that the single most important thing that Indian manufacturers are not entirely understanding is the fact that you have to, in this business, if you are not investing heavily into this, into being able to catch up with this technology change pace, it's very fast, right? You have to invest constantly into changing technology, right? If you're not doing that, then then you are kind of losing the game. And that's a very important point, and which also reminds me of what a lot of people said in the inaugural session today, that there is a need for us to take tech and R&D investments more seriously in areas like solar. Yeah, but coming to Sandeep, I want to understand from you, of late, if you look at the solar manufacturing space, the entire solar space, we have had this some kind of a strategic alliance between the equipment manufacturers and the developers, right? So a lot of companies are present in both the areas. So what are the implications or concerns arising out of that? If you could give us, based on your own understanding and background, how do you look at that change?
Sure. So if you look at the genesis of the alliance, first of all, if you just step back and see, the drivers for a manufacturing business are very different from a regulated generation business, right? Generation is long-term, 15, 20 years investment. As I said, 13, 14% kind of an equity return, very capital intensive, high gestation, high leverage. Manufacturing, on the other side, is very working capital intensive, right? You can actually recover your capex, your payback can be much faster. But it will have, nuances around the cash flows, which could not be annuity-like, right? It could go up and down, and we have already discussed about how price fluctuations can, completely put you out of gear. Apart from the technology risk, which we have also covered. The genesis of these JVs and these strategic alliances have been the heavy dependence that the generation companies have had in terms of procuring the modules. At one point in time, as you were bidding for these projects, and a lot of that actually has to do with, the first part of the discussion that we were having on the pricing. Today, if I am bidding for a project and I get another 12 to 18 months, right, for the project to take off, including the financial closure and stuff like that, the prices move up and down, right? In a matter of 6 months, you could actually see a price correction of 30 to 40% in terms of the landed module cost. The genesis of the strategic alliance was basically to diffuse this over-dependence of the manufacturing capabilities which India was lacking, or let's say, in some way we can say the overdependence which was there on countries like China, because 80-90% of whatever you are procuring, is essentially coming from China. The strategic alliances that have happened, we've seen just the precursor of that in India, where, Azure partnering with Premier, AMP partnering with Jupiter, some of the names, just to share with you. The genesis is that, wherein from a longer term perspective, a manufacturing company and is tying up with a generation company and otherwise, right? Because the generation company will have a mandate to do anywhere between 3 to 5 gigawatts, unless you are, someone like Adani and Reliance, which will have a 5 gigawatt plus kind of a generation capacity to be added every year. They need, a reasonable source of supply of modules on a longer term basis. And I think that is the reason why even larger players like Renew have actually dabbled into manufacturing now, which was not the case till about 3 years back. So I see that this scope has a lot of significance in terms of the progress that the sector is going to see. And I'm not talking of manufacturing alone. I'm just saying that this integrated model perhaps is the way to go forward. Also to make our whole ecosystem in the solar to be more sustainable, because the targets that we have set for ourselves are, aspirational. I mean, to reach to a 450 gigawatt renewable capacity and to add, I think Rahul mentioned 25-30 gigawatts is what we are slated to add. I think to reach to the numbers that we have set for ourselves, that number should be at least 2 times of that. I see 50 to 60 gigawatts have to be added, from now on. And to reach to that, I think these collaborations will go a long way. Technology expertise coming from, established players like Jinko, wherein they come and unite with the domestic players, Indian players, will also go a long way in terms of creating this sustainable environment.
Okay. Manish, I want to understand from you this thing about, so if you look at India, there's a lot of, so there's a stall target of capacity creation, demand, etc. But as a company which is already in that space, as a large, you occupy a large part of that space already, right? Is that the same? Is that same kind of stall target and capacity creation, etc.? All of that, is that reflected in your order book going forward already? Can you give us some sense of? I mean, you mentioned in your earlier comment how your India business has grown from, let's say, a few hundred megawatt to around 6 or 7,000 now. But going forward, what is the indication that we get from your order book? And secondly, from a strategy point of view, how do you want to grow in India? What is the kind of if you could share a few numbers about in the long term, what kind of capacity creation do you see happening here? In what way do you want to kind of capitalize on the opportunity that exists here?
So in terms of numbers, I think right now I don't have a set target for next 3 years or 5 years. But this year, I think we have a target to reach approximately 10 gigawatt of sales in India. And why we say this is because we see that there are several projects which have a huge requirement of high efficiency products, which we are manufacturing not only in China, but also in Malaysia, in Vietnam. And there is demand coming from those locations as well. So looking at the collective demand in India from across the factories that we are operating, we see that this year we will be ending at around 10 giga against a target within India of around 25 gigawatt of installations, which I see based upon the tender pipeline and everything. So we like to stay around 35 to 40% of market share level, which we have seen in last 3 to 5 years for Jinko to happen. But having said this, how we look at the further collaborations, as I mentioned briefly in my previous message, that we are looking at collaborating with Indian players. We are not only looking at only the space where IPP with a big investment potential is only buying this product. Sometimes investors have a pull from their back-end global investors to buy a specific bankable kind of a module or a specific tier of module, which may not be possible when we collaborate with an Indian player or with an Indian manufacturer. So we are creating that kind of a niche that uh, within this space, when we are seeing a big boost coming to rooftop, big boost coming to village level or a domestic level of installations, we want to tap that market as well, and we feel that domestic player will play a big role in that, and we would like to collaborate with them in terms of not only giving them the right knowledge how to pick up the right specifications of a machinery when they are buying a new technology. For example, we have tied up with now 2 or 3 players. We have run a small trial production of 50 megawatts already, and now they are quite excited to try out N-type technology, and they want to invest. So they would like to know from us which type of machinery we should be purchasing for N-type, which we are doing in China or elsewhere, which will help them to stay ahead of the competition within the domestic market. So we are helping them with that kind of insights, and also helping them with right kind of supply chain choosing. Sometimes they may not get the right cells or right glass or right back sheets from China even. So we are helping them to tie up with that kind of supply chain. So we are working on that kind of a collaborative approach where it is a win-win for both sides.
Okay, thank you, Manish. So you're basically taking the partnership tie-up kind of route. Any plans to set up a local manufacturing base in India?
Unfortunately, we are not getting the right push from government because there are some issues with the FDI for the neighboring countries. So this is another issue. Hopefully, after this election, we might get something to get into this space as well. But until then, we are working with this kind of approach. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all the panelists for sharing their views. I think that brings us to an end of this discussion, and we'll be happy to take questions. There's a hand being raised, so please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sukriti. I'm part of Macquarie team. I think Sandeep sir and Rahul sir both mentioned about it briefly. I just have a question around the module manufacturing capacity in India right now. So I think you mentioned that India is domestically producing 40 gigawatts right now. So where do you think we'll be, say, by 2030? And do you think what is the estimate that you have that we'll be importing this much, considering that the capacity addition that we require is approximately 280 gigawatts by 2030 for solar installations basically? So where do you think the module manufacturing will be in India? And that's majorly the question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so see when you look at the capacity, there are 2 ways to look at it. One is, of course, the end product, which is the module manufacturing. That capacity, like I said, is 30-40 gigawatts already in India. But when you look at fully integrated capacity, where you say I'll manufacture right from polysilicon up to the module, that capacity unfortunately is 0 today, because we don't have any manufacturing for polysilicon. Yes, we have some players who've committed investment under the PLI. Adani has committed investment outside the PLI that we will be setting up the polysilicon manufacturing. That polysilicon to module manufacturing should be in the range of about 25 to 30 gigawatts if all the PLI players execute as per their PLI awards. Then we should be about 30 gigawatts of fully integrated capacity in India in the next 3 years. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, good afternoon, panelists. I am Ravi Sena, Director for MSME Business Forum India. In fact, the topic was how are we taking the global, making India a global solar manufacturing hub. So my question is to Manish and others. We are talking of all the consumptions in India, right? But we know that Australia is going in for a Green Olympics. Smart Energy Council, which was here during G20, was categorically looking for tie-ups in India. I wish to understand, we are very good to go in India. How are we taking our manufacturing capacities, capabilities globally? Are we tying up? If yes, can I have answers in terms of as our for example, our fantastic SMEs, are we starting to export? I know Adani's will answer it, but what about others? And Mohit, to your question of land availability, I think Invest India will be more than happy to support you with land if you're trying to put up a plant in India. So country specific, can I have some answers from you?
I'll just take some point of this question. When you look at the Indian manufacturers' readiness to export to any country, be it Australia because there's a Green Olympic coming up, or anywhere else, it is again a demand and supply. When US shuts the door for China, it opens the door for India and other countries. So it is generally a demand supply matrix which drives the whole supply chain, as well as demand from any particular country. If that country is in that same space of technology, which is in demand, for that particular project. Coming to readiness, so I feel that Indian companies have the capability, have the competence level, have the efficiencies to compete at global scale, and we have seen that several companies have got a lot of orders from Europe, US, and other parts of the world, and they have successfully competed against Chinese companies as well. So I think nobody stops such kind of competition if you have that mindset. And it is not that it is highly fiercely competitive market globally. Rather, global markets are giving more cent per watt peak of the same product that we see in India or in China. India and China being the most price sensitive markets, when it comes to tendering and those kind of bidding scenario. So global markets are definitely a big playground, and we should make one part of our capacity in such a way which can compete globally, and one part of it should be available for the need of the domestic supplies, because there are so many policies and so many scope available for supplying domestically as well. But at the same time, we should balance both the scenarios. In the space where you mentioned about Invest India, support, really thankful that this support is available. Whenever we think of looking at a factory space, we will look at that. But as of now, direct investments are not a part of the plan of Jinko or maybe Government of India as well. But yes, as and when it is opened up, definitely we will look at that. Thank you.
Yeah, Rahul, you want to respond to that?
I think from the Indian manufacturing space perspective, what Manish just said is absolutely correct. It's all about demand and supply. In fact, today, considering the reasonableness question, it is easier for an Indian manufacturer to export than to sell in the domestic market, because the reasonableness expectation of developers in India is significantly lower than what an Indian manufacturer can even dream of supplying at. So from that perspective, exports is a good fallback right now. But my belief is that at some point in time, we need to be ready to be able to supply to the most competitive or the most demanding market in the world, which could be India or China maybe. And we want to be ready. We want to be capable of doing that. It's just a matter of another 2 or 3 years while we go through our growing pains, get the backward integration in place, and then we should be ready to be able to address the Indian market too. In the meantime, all markets are open. Our plants that we are setting up, all manufacturers in India are setting up, are all capable of exporting to any demanding market in the world. So from that perspective, I think there is no need to worry about whether we have the right technology or the right product or the right efficiencies or the right capabilities. We've already, and Manish rightly said, we've been exporting to the US, one of the most demanding markets, and successfully executed orders there, large orders there, competing with some of our big brother Chinese players who, with capacities. So just for perspectives, China's capacity of manufacturing is almost 3 times what the world needs on an annual basis for installation. So with that kind of capacity, we are taking baby steps to start off the process of manufacturing in India. And I think that's where we need some more support and some more patience from the countrymen on the developer side or the manufacturer side or the user side.
If we can take one more question quickly, please.
I am Ajay Yadav. Till now we are doing or acquiring businesses from NCLT, but right now we are diversifying into this solar and renewable energies. So basically, we are going to launch 2, 3, 500 megawatt projects in different states. We have already acquired the lands, etc. So my query or question is to will Jinko will be able to do any type of JV or association if you would like to join hands, one thing. And second to sir, will NTPC, as a PPA, what type of value addition or, differentiate if we'll just go ahead with the NTPC for PPAs?
First and foremost, the PPAs are through a bidding process. So if you are setting up a project and you want to participate in the tariff-based bidding process, and if you are the winner, PPA will be given, whether NTPC or SECI or anyone for that matter.
No, but like few state government schemes, especially suppose Karo, Jharkhand and Patna, what I understand, if there is a land and we got every approval and everything, so there is a specific discretionary power of NTPC. Maybe I'm wrong. I just want to understand.
No, NTPC does not have any discretionary power. So if the state has that power, then you can approach the state directly.
Okay.
NTPC will procure only through a bidding process.
Answer the other part. See, Jinko is looking at collaborations, of course, JVs or whatever way, but we are not, looking to partner with any greenfield project, proponent as of now. We are looking at somebody who has already some experience or some hands-on manufacturing. They already have a place or a factory which is really delivering, and without, getting to that level of, technology or competence within the factory, because our teams will come and audit those factories which are producing that product. We would like to check their quality process, their operational efficiencies and, skill set of the management and teams before we, start collaborating. So greenfield would be a challenge for us to collaborate or tie up, but any operating or running factory would be a good candidate for that. Thank you.
Isha, if I can take one more question, there's been a hand raised for quite some time. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Hello, I'm Sanjeeva De Silva. I'm the Councillor for Energy and Resources for the Australian Government. My question's for Jinko. I mean, ultimately, all of what we're doing is trying to, reduce the carbon footprint, ultimately aim for our climate goals. I had a question about your integrated facility. First, I heard 100 gigawatts, that single integrated facility, but then a number of other people said 50 gigawatts. Could you just confirm, did you say 100 or 50 gigawatts for that integrated facility? And second, we know that sort of 50 to 60% of the emissions and energy input into a solar panel is from the polysilicon itself. And NREL has done some fantastic work looking at various life cycle analyses that have been done around these solar panels, and some of the worst are, emitting almost 200 kilograms per megawatt hour, not that far behind a coal power station. So my question is, what would Jinko do about the polysilicon if you were bringing that into your factories that are otherwise carbon neutral?
Yeah, so I mentioned about our new product, which is a carbon neutral product, and we have specifically named it as Neo Green. This is one part of our product launch, out of 100 gigawatt of capacity, where we have, complete integrated facilities coming from polysilicon to wafer and ingot, everything, under one roof. One part of that manufacturing we have earmarked as carbon neutral. So it is not the entire factory which is carbon neutral as of now. We are aiming for that, but we have taken at least the first step towards it. And if I'm not wrong, it should be around 5 to 6 gigawatt of the capacity which we have earmarked out of that factory, which will be carbon neutral. So we have taken a lot of care to ensure that that segment of the factory has zero carbon footprint, whether it is the process or components or logistics, or even the manpower which is coming to the factory or going out from the factory, to that level. We have earmarked every single point which can contribute towards the carbon footprint of that factory and created earmark the separate zone, which is a carbon neutral. And we are kind of creating it as a benchmark for us, for industry to adopt and, to grow with that philosophy. So as of now, the answer to you is, it is not fully carbon neutral because there are a lot of processes we have to improve further. but this is still a right step in the right direction.
Thank you. Thanks, Manish. And over to you, Isha.